And I said, no, I need it. I really need it tonight.
He doesn't carry grudges. He carries memories. Sharp as glass. Mel Brooks never forgot the actor who blew a line, brushed off a note, or walked on set believing they were larger than the film itself. Once your name went into that ledger, it stayed there.
Guts, you have such guts. Guts.
For more than 6 decades, Mel Brooks built an empire out of madness. From Blazing Saddles to Young Frankenstein, he reshaped comedy with one guiding law: master the mayhem. Behind every wild performance lay precision, rhythm, and most of all, trust. When that trust broke, Brooks didn't rage, didn't explode, he erased you. The producers. Spaceballs. History of the world. Brooks wasn't just casting roles, he was engineering machines. Actors were gears in something bigger, louder, faster. If one squeaked, he swapped it out mid-spin. Higher and fire. Fire and higher. A ruthless cycle. Some players broke the rule. Some dismissed it. Others never even knew it existed. But Mel remembered them all. The ones who wasted his time. The ones who believed they were sharper than the script. The ones who forgot they were visitors in a world he built from nothing. He's praised thousands of performers, but 5 names rise above the rest, for all the wrong reasons. The ego wars. The silences after a scene. The firings that never made the headlines. 5 actors landed on Mel Brooks's blacklist forever. First up, Frank Langella. Some actors lose a role. Langella lost the director himself. On paper, he seemed perfect. Brooks was preparing Dracula, dead and loving it, and Langella had already played the Count on Broadway to glowing reviews. Tall, commanding, theatrical, he looked like the answer. But he was Dracula in the most serious sense, and that was the problem. Brooks wasn't interested in gothic shadows or candlelit tragedy. He wanted gags, pratfalls, a vampire who could brood one moment and slip on a candelabra the next. Langella, however, approached the project as if he were reprising Shakespeare instead of parodying him. From the start, the rhythm was wrong. Rehearsals dragged. Brooks, usually the ringmaster of a controlled circus, felt the energy collapse. Langella refused to improvise or play. He delivered his lines as though they were carved in stone, precise, untouchable. He wasn't Dracula, Brooks later confided. He was auditioning for sainthood. Brooks tried to adjust him, offering notes, suggestions, gentle nudges, but nothing worked. Langella would listen politely and then return to his marble stillness. Off camera, tension grew. Brooks thrived on speed and chaos. Langella weighed everything down. Scenes designed to bounce and sparkle instead sank under the heaviness of each solemn pause. The cast, veterans of comedy and character work, began to hesitate. Crew members whispered among themselves, "Is this supposed to be a comedy or an opera?" Then came the turning point. During a table read, Brooks handed Langella a new line, a classic Brooks setup with a dramatic build that ended in a pratfall. Langella blinked, paused, and asked flatly, "Do you want me to mock the script?" Brooks stared at him for a moment before replying, "No. I want you to survive it." That was the breaking point. By the end of the week, Langella was gone. There were no fights, no public statements, just a quiet replacement, Leslie Nielsen. This was the Dracula Brooks wanted, one who could keep a straight face while the world collapsed into absurdity around him. Brooks wasn't searching for gravitas. He was looking for control in the middle of chaos, and Nielsen delivered exactly that. Langella did not. Officially, the explanation was creative differences, but everyone close to the project knew the truth. Brooks wasn't going to wrestle a Shakespearean monument into slapstick. He needed someone who could sense the joke before the punchline even arrived, and Langella couldn't. He left the production quietly and never spoke of it again. Brooks, for his part, never mocked him in public. But when the subject of Dracula, dead and loving it came up, Brooks always praised Nielsen with a single word: perfect. Langella's name never surfaced. In Brooks's world, there were only 2 kinds of actors, those who lifted the madness higher, and those who were buried by it. Langella came in wearing a crown. But Brooks wasn't building royalty. He was orchestrating chaos, and the only way to survive was to love the fall. Number 2. Chevy Chase. Brooks had an uncanny radar for energy. Before a rehearsal, before a single line was spoken, he could sense whether someone belonged. With Chase, the answer came instantly: no. The two never collaborated, not once, and that wasn't coincidence. Studios floated Chase's name throughout the 80s and early 90s, trying to connect two big brands, Brooks the director and Chase the star. Chevy was a proven draw, a recognizable face, with box office power and a flawless deadpan style. And still, Brooks rejected him every time.
Why?
Because Chevy Chase broke the first law of Brooks's universe: collaboration. Brooks had seen it on late-night shows, heard it in stories from mutual friends, caught it in industry whispers. Chase was quick, sharp, and biting. He could fill a room with laughter, but just as quickly, with discomfort. Brooks once told a casting director, "He's not performing. He's just waiting for everyone else to shut up so he can show he's the smartest one here." But Brooks wasn't after the smartest man in the room. He wanted generosity, rhythm, someone who could nail the joke and then let someone else land the final laugh. Chase never fit that mold. The closest they came to crossing paths was during casting for Spaceballs, the near miss that confirmed Brooks's instincts. Chevy Chase's name nearly slipped into Brooks's orbit when Spaceballs was in development. Studios pitched him for Dark Helmet. He had the voice, the dryness, even the look. Brooks barely considered it. He already had Rick Moranis in mind. "Rick knows when to step back," Brooks later explained. "Chevy only knows how to interrupt." For Brooks, chemistry outweighed star power. Timing was sacred. Ego was not. Privately, he described Chase as someone who barged into comedy instead of flowing with it. Brooks respected the skill, but not the attitude. Chase always seemed removed, smirking from a distance. To Brooks, comedy wasn't about irony, it was about conviction. No matter how outrageous the setup, you had to believe it. Chevy didn't. The two reportedly met once, briefly. The exchange was stiff, forgettable, and ended with Brooks smiling politely and saying, "Maybe in another universe." That universe never arrived. In later interviews, Brooks avoided naming names but dropped hints. Some actors are so self-aware they forget to be present. You can see them thinking about themselves instead of the scene. When asked if he meant Chevy Chase, Brooks only smiled and changed the subject. For him, comedy was an ensemble act, shared rhythm, trust, the invisible agreement between performers. I'll catch you, you catch me. Chase didn't trust anyone. He used silence like a weapon, words like knives, and every exchange became a contest. Brooks wasn't looking for winners. He was looking for partners. In the end, Chase wasn't blacklisted. He was simply excluded. Not because he lacked talent, but because he didn't fit. Brooks embraced misfits, but he had no place for ego disguised as confidence. Number 3. Gene Wilder. Some betrayals come from outsiders. Brooks's most painful one came from a friend. Gene Wilder wasn't just another actor. He was Brooks's creative twin. Together, they had redrawn the map of comedy. The producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, these weren't just box office successes, they were revolutions. But after Young Frankenstein, the partnership shifted. Much of the script came from Wilder's pen, but Brooks shaped it, directed it, and fought tooth and nail to keep it in black and white. The result was lightning in a bottle, a film instantly hailed as a classic. Behind the curtain, though, the cracks began. Wilder had another script ready, one just as dear to him, The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes's Smarter Brother. He had written it, wanted to star in it, and above all, wanted Mel Brooks to produce. Brooks declined, not because it lacked wit or merit, but because, as he put it, Gene wasn't ready to direct. Wilder believed he was. Brooks believed he wasn't. That single disagreement felt like betrayal. Wilder expected unwavering support. Brooks offered distance. And that distance quickly hardened into silence. Wilder made the film without him, bringing along familiar faces like Marty Feldman and Madeline Kahn, but the spark wasn't the same. The rhythm faltered, the magic dimmed. What broke on set lingered off it. 4 years, the two men didn't speak. No explosive arguments, no bitter press interviews, just a cold absence between two friends who once felt inseparable. Brooks later told a friend, "It was like watching your brother pack his bags and leave home, only he took your best joke with him." They eventually crossed paths again by accident at an event. There was no grand reconciliation, no dramatic embrace, only a handshake, a few laughs, and a slow return to something resembling friendship. But a fracture remained. They never worked together again. Not out of fury, but disappointment. Brooks would later admit that Gene Wilder was the only actor he ever trusted with unfinished ideas. He could hand him half a scene, a character without a punchline, and Gene would deliver the ending as if it had been there all along. After Smarter Brother, the bond between Brooks and Wilder never fully healed. Wilder had stepped outside the circle, and in Brooks's world, you didn't get to step out twice. Publicly, they remained warm, respectful, even affectionate. But privately, in the world Brooks built on timing, instinct, and a peculiar brand of loyalty, Gene Wilder became the man who cut the thread. Not out of malice, but enough to leave a scar. Because the ones who know you best are the ones who know exactly where to pull. Number 4. Harvey Korman. On screen, Korman was gold. Brooks relied on him for some of the biggest laughs of his career, and got them. Blazing Saddles. High Anxiety. History of the World, Part 1. Korman could spin a monologue, stretch a ridiculous expression until it cracked, then collapse it into pure chaos. But off-screen, there was tension Brooks rarely acknowledged. Korman had come from the Carol Burnett Show, where he thrived in sketches, loose scripts, and improvisation. He was used to the room bending around him. Brooks's sets worked differently. He directed like a conductor. Every beat, every reaction, every pause had its place. If one person drifted too far, the whole piece lost balance. And Korman, for all his brilliance, drifted often. Their biggest clash came during High Anxiety. Brooks cast him as Dr. Montague, the stiff, sinister head of the Psychoneurotic Institute for the very, very nervous. Korman wanted to rebuild the role. New quirks, rewrites, even whole scenes. Brooks shut it down. The funny part's already written. All we need is for you to do it. Korman didn't take it lightly. Tensions rose. He paused between takes, questioned blocking, pushed back on line deliveries. Brooks, who usually thrived on riffing with actors, began cutting conversations short. What should have been a smooth shoot turned into a battlefield of small adjustments. Crew members would later call it silent warfare. They never shouted, but every scene became a tug of war. Midway through the shoot, Brooks confided to a producer, "Harvey wants to be the director. But I already have that job." By the last week of filming, their conversations had dwindled to near silence. Brooks sent notes through his assistant, while Korman kept to himself between takes. The spark that once made Blazing Saddles explode with energy had stiffened into something brittle. On screen, the performance still landed. Korman was too skilled to let the strain show, but Brooks never forgot what it cost. After High Anxiety, Korman's name quietly vanished from future projects. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. Brooks later summed it up simply. Some actors brought joy to the set. Harvey brought brilliance, but always with resistance. There was no dramatic rupture, no public fallout, just an unspoken agreement that their partnership had run its course. Korman remained proud of the films they made together, often praising Brooks in interviews, and Brooks, for his part, never dismissed Korman's contributions to his greatest work. But they never reunited. The rhythm was gone, and Brooks's world depended on rhythm. He could manage chaos. He could wrangle divas, eccentrics, even full-blown absurdity. But once collaboration turned into competition, the work stopped feeling like comedy and started feeling like combat. Brooks wasn't in it to win wars. He was in it to make people laugh. And when that became harder than the punchline itself, he walked away. Number 5. Jerry Lewis. Brooks admired brilliance, but he had no patience for arrogance. With Jerry Lewis, he saw both, genius tangled with ego, and decided it wasn't worth the fight. 4 years, their names were linked by reputation. Two comedic architects, each building universes from absurdity, each writing, directing, and starring in their own material. Studios pushed for a collaboration, but it never came. Behind closed doors, Brooks described Lewis as brilliant, but exhausting. He respected the nutty professor, respected the influence, but never warmed to the man. The final break came during casting talks in the mid-1980s. Brooks was developing Lifstinks, a satire about a billionaire forced to live on the streets. Lewis's name came up, and with it, the last serious chance of them working together. When the studio suggested Jerry Lewis for a supporting role, they framed it as prestige casting. Brooks refused outright. "I don't need someone who thinks he's funnier than the movie," he reportedly told his producer. Lewis was notorious for rewriting on the spot, butting heads with directors, and pulling every ounce of attention the moment he entered a room. Brooks never shared control, not on set, not in the edit bay. The two met only once, over dinner arranged by a mutual acquaintance. Brooks arrived curious. Lewis arrived late. He launched into a 15-minute monologue about the future of comedy in America, barely acknowledging Mel across the table. Brooks listened, nodded, and excused himself early. Later, he summed it up simply, "I wanted a partner." He wanted applause. That dinner was the end of any possibility. In public, both stayed polite. Brooks never mocked him on record, and Lewis rarely mentioned Brooks at all. But privately, the truth was clear. This wasn't a friendship missed, it was a collaboration rejected before it began. Brooks once explained his casting choices this way: "If someone believes they're the center of the universe, they can't exist in mine. I already have a son." That was the essence of it. Brooks built ensembles. He orchestrated chaos with precision, anarchy with structure. He let stars shine, but only if they understood the galaxy was bigger than any single performance. Jerry Lewis couldn't. His ego left no room. Brooks later told friends that hiring Lewis would have been a nuclear disaster, not because of his talent, but because of the fallout backstage. Constant rewrites, power struggles, too loud, too much, too late. So there was never a script reading, never an offer, never even a serious call, just distant admiration mixed with quiet rejection. Because even geniuses get shut out when they confuse the set with a mirror. And Brooks never made a scene about it. He didn't shout, didn't slam doors. He just closed them, quietly, permanently. Some actors were cut loose for lack of talent. But these 5 weren't lacking talent at all. What they lacked was trust, rhythm, humility, or simply the ability to share the room. And once you lost Brooks's trust, there was no second chance. You weren't just out of the role, you were out of the story. So, who do you think almost made the list? Or maybe should have? Drop your guesses in the comments. And if you want early access to the next Hollywood Blacklist, hit like, subscribe, and join the channel for members-only breakdowns. Because in Mel Brooks's world, landing a part wasn't the reward. Keeping it was.